and tell you what I think and what we should do. And if you have questions or you want to yell something out or say something while I'm talking, that's fine. Just say it. And especially if you have questions. I was assistant harbor master from 2007 to 2013. I went to the meetings every month pretty much, and I know how this process went, and I know how we ended up where we are, which is the steel water breakwater, the steel barrier, the steel sheet metal breakwater, and the dredging in the parking lot. Because we got $19.5 million in state money. It's not free money. When you spend money and you build things, and there's maintenance on that, what you build. So I disagree with this idea that it's free money. And they spent $600,000 and they studied the soil, the bottom of the ocean outside the breakwater. And it was too soft for the rubble mound that we have, like we have. That's why a lot of people think we should just do what we have, you know. But it would have sunk into the soil. And the engineers said, well,
Joel,
you can...
I just,
Yes, please, ask.
This is your depiction of the existing harbor.
Yes, this is the existing.
Okay,
These
so
are the...
Maybe pull it out a little bit
Oh,
more.
sure.
'Cause
Yeah, bring it forward.
It's an open forum. Feel free to interrupt me, whatever. That's fine. I don't care. I'll
Yeah.
answer your
What are we
question.
looking at?
Everybody be here.
Okay.
And so the subsurface or the clay was too soft for rubble mound. The engineers told us. And they did a $600,000 study, so they know that for a fact. Okay, they did the core samples. The engineers said we could have put rubble mound for a year and let it sit, and then a second year and let it sit. A third year they could stack it up and then have a rubble mound. But the committee, Don Turner, Bill Thomas, and Norm Hughes were pretty much the driving factors. They said that, and it would cost more, and that would be less money for the other things they wanted. So they said, okay, the steel water breakwater was the steel wall breakwater was $4, $5, $6 million, and that was going to take a year to build, and that would leave more money for what they wanted, especially the drive down float for the fishermen. The fishermen wanted the drive down float because that's what they have in Juneau. And you drive your truck down, there's a crane, zzz, zzz, zzz. Ironically, we have a drive down float on F-Dock already. You just back your truck up to a crane and you could put it onto a boat. But you have to walk down the gangway, of course, and that was a little inconvenient.
Yeah.
So, and also the F-Dock is deteriorating and it's getting towards the end of its life, and there's really no money budgeted for fixing it. If you look at the wood pilings at low tide underneath the gas pumps down there at the boat harbor, they're deteriorating. The steel pilings here, they're getting almost 20 years old, and they are deteriorating, and they're going to need replaced, and we haven't budgeted money for that. So where's that money going to come from? Well, in my opinion, it's going to come from the pool and the school and the Chilkat Center and all these other services that people make it worth living here, you know. We also didn't put sinks on any of the pilings on the whole project that when we built the floats. So they're going to have a shorter lifespan than if we put sinks on there. Now we can still do that, but where's that money going to come from? You know, so that's one of my concerns is the maintenance we have on the stuff we have already. So the steel water, the steel breakwater is in the pipeline. It's going to take a lot of effort to change that plan. The Borough Assembly has agreed with the Harbor Committee that that's what we should do. And they say that that's going to lead to better chances of getting the other $10 million to put some floats in there and a drive down float and the thing for your cars to back your trailers down there.
The ramp.
Launch ramp. Launch ramp. They want a better launch ramp. Well, we already have a launch ramp over here, which
And what's
worked.
wrong with it?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
The current one, existing.
Well, it wasn't a double wide,
Oh, okay.
and it didn't have a thing in the middle for you to park your boat on and then run back to your car. But again, we only use it 5 or 6 months a year. I mean, you've got to remember, all this is shut down from the end of September till the 1st of May, pretty much. There's no business down there for almost 7 months. Half the slips are empty the entire winter. There's no income, there's no business. So, and so they're saying, well, we've got all these boats on the wait list, and everybody, the thing is full, we need to expand. I just walked through the harbor an hour and a half ago. There's places for 30 boats down there. There's 25 empty slips, and you can put 5 boats out on E transient and 3 on F. There's about places for 30 boats down there. If there's 90 boats waiting to get in the harbor, why is there 30 empty slips? About half of those are fishermen that are out fishing now, but that's what they do. They go out in the summer and they fish, and there's plenty of... And another thing, too, to keep in mind is nobody ever called the harbor master here to put their boat in the harbor, and he said, no, you can't come in. Unless it was a 70-footer or something, a 60 or 70-footer. Because there's these places. Yes, you don't get a slip in your name until you come up on the top of the wait list, but there's places for your boat. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of space. But they say, and the harbor committee used this relentlessly that we have this wait list, and that was a big reason. Well, let me just, go through the wait list a little bit. The top of the 29 to 39 foot section, which is a major, the 29 to 39 foot long boats, it's a major segment of the boat population. At the top is Roger Maynard. I haven't seen him around in 4 or 5 years. He moved to Ketchikan. Scott Hamilton. He left in 2006. Then you got Carl Johnson, Reed Barber, Ralph McGuire, Joan Sizemore, Rich Chapel, Tom Spencer. They've all got boats. They're all already sitting in the harbor. And they're already paying their fees, you see. So, say we did get some new floats, which isn't even part of the plan because we're $10 million short on our plan, they would just move over to some other slip and that one would be open. And there's no new money coming in from it. And that's pretty much the way the whole wait list works. And the 50-footers, that's where the real money is. You've got like Bruce Bauer, he sold his boat, he's out of the business. Jay Moody, he never had a boat. Gabe Alamillo, he doesn't have a boat. Mike McCoviak, he already has a boat in the harbor. What, does he have 2? Carl Johnson, he doesn't have a 50-footer, and Glenn Jacobson has the Fjordland, and he's already paying for a slip there. So he just got on the wait list for whatever reason. I don't know. He might get a second boat. But it's just, it drives me a little crazy that we use this on our own town to say we needed this harbor expansion and that we're going to build this 700-foot long steel wall that's going to cost $400,000 in 7 years in zincs or something. And where's that money going to come from, I ask you? This is a...
Is the construction of that steel wall similar to the one in Skagway?
Yes, it'll be that, from my understanding. Yes.
Attractive.
It's going to look like that, and it's going to deteriorate like that, too. And one of the captains of the Fjordland told me that the steel wall in Skagway is using zincs faster than they thought. So, well, I don't know. Long story short, we need to change the plan. I think we need to put money into FDOT and fix that. And just forget it. Now, the south swell does come in about once a year. I was down there for 7 years. I saw it with my own eyes. There is a 5 or 6 foot swell that comes in and it rattles the boats over here about once a year. And that would help protect these. Amazingly, the other floats lasted 30 years and they died a natural death. The new ones we built, maybe they're not as good as those old ones. The other ones were cement. They were said to be heavier. These ones are wood. They rattle. But this is going to be a visual nightmare out here for everybody. This is going to, and it's going to cost a lot of money. That's going to come from Haines Borough. And then there's the problem with Lutak Harbor also, which is just past the ferry terminal. It's physics, my friends. There's steel and concrete. It's been there for 60-some years. It's getting ready to return to seed. It's on the engineer's report. Living on borrowed time, unsafe according to U.S. Army Corps of Engineers standards, and the borough just doesn't have a plan right now for either decommissioning it or refurbishing it. And we don't have the money. So I'm very concerned about that. I would, people have asked me, what's your goal? What's your goal in all this? And I know it would be a miracle, but I would like to see this 15 million we have left for this, or 16, go over to LUTAC. That would take a legislative deal, and that would be a huge risk for us. If we said, we didn't want the 16 million for this, and then hopefully did that, But that is the start of the Alaska Highway over there at Lutak. The email barge comes up. It's not only goods for Haines, and it's not only the gasoline that parks there, that they also send things up the highway. It's the start of the Alaska Marine Highway, and they send goods to mining companies, big equipment to mining companies, and things to Fairbanks, and things to Anchorage, probably some things for the military, you know. The dock in Lutak is the start of the Haines Highway. And so, just what I think we can do, so I guess what I was hoping for tonight is to get some people that behind me or that I can encourage you to talk to your assembly people. And one of the things you have to keep in mind too is power and how power works. That the assembly people have the power to change the plan. And it's a science, you know, it's a technique, it's an actual thing, power. And you have to look at what powers you have or what powers I have, and that is basically to do citizen complaint forms or letters to the editor or talk to these people. And I think we should contact people at the state level too and tell them what's going on here. The governor, the representatives, the senators, the Department of Transportation, the Army Corps of Engineers. I think if we tell people what's going on here, maybe they'll help. Because it's going to be a mess for everybody when Lutak crumbles. The whole state is going to be going, wow, what happened there, you know? And it's going to be a large bill for Haines. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and you can't avoid it. Read the engineer's report. So I was hoping maybe you guys would tell me something. Go ahead, Deborah.
I can tell you something. I looked up the grant agreement that the Haines Borough has with the Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development. Because this discussion that a lot of us people have sometimes about transferring funds from one place to another, or from one project to another, I really don't know that would be appropriate, but it could be perhaps explored. And that has to do with a couple of things. Let's see. Okay. Amendment and modifications, Article 11. The grantee or the department may request an amendment or a modification of this grant agreement. However, such amendment or modification shall not take effect until approved in writing by the department and the grantee. Now, there's a big difference between amending, a contract that still is true to what its original intent was, and the intent of this grant agreement is absolutely to build the wave barrier, the uplands, and dredging in the small boat harbor. It's very specific. It doesn't just say any harbor or any port. It's very specific to that. So I don't know that could actually get changed. But the thing that I was thinking about was the ability to negotiate with the Department of Community and Economic Development, because I think a lot of us are feeling really squeezed. A lot of, we have to make decisions, we have to move forward, we have to spend the money, because the contract does say the work to be performed under this agreement begins July 2012 and shall be completed no longer than 6/30/2017. So I asked myself, well, is that subject to amendment? And I haven't had the answer given to me yet, but I certainly don't have the authority to, call up the Department of Commerce and ask them if it could be amended. But I would like to see that explored to allow us to have time to settle in on what changes, if any, the community would like to see. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a little bit more time because would you like standing up? Yeah.
Yes, please do.
Well, I've mentioned this before in a public meeting, and I was a member of the Borough Assembly when it was on February 25th. On February 25th, the Borough Assembly was on the agenda, on a consent agenda, the decision to support the Ports and Harbor Advisory Committee's recommendation on Concept 14 for the boulevard. We were given a document that showed Concept 14, which is the concept that we are all working on right now, okay? There were other, and you can imagine if one of these is number 14, then there obviously were 13 ahead of that. And there was also, though, at the same time, Concept 3A. And I was in support of 3A for several reasons. It's $4 million cheaper. It also does not separate the two, classifications of boat owners. The Concept 14 right now has a gangway that goes down to one set of floats, and then another gangway that goes down to another set of floats. What we have never done is adequately examined what that design element does for the costs of maintaining the harbor. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just saying we never have really critically explored that one to the other. And the other thing I would like to say too, and that is I will take blame for my own lack of perception in this, but I don't want to blame any other person or body. The Ports and Harbor Advisory Committee was asked to examine this. We have turnover in our government constantly. We can't expect people to, sit there and read a full year's worth of, material that went beforehand. So when you get handed something like this and you're new on the assembly, or if you're a new manager or whatever, it's like, okay, here's the plan, but it's not clear what options there were before. So I stand here and tell you I was not in favor of this option. It is more expensive than the option 3A, which has one basin. I personally would like to see us go back to that. I'm not pursuing the idea that we not improve the harbor. I think that we should improve the harbor, but I do think that that Joe is absolutely correct. The fishermen are pretty clear that what they want is a drive-down ramp, or whatever, loading dock. There are very clear things about what the fishermen need and want. But there were also fishermen that signed a petition that asked the Borough Assembly to re-look at the project. So not all fishermen are necessarily, supportive of this other plan that is more expensive than the one we have right now that we are working on.
Does 3A include the drive-down ramp?
Yes, it does. The basic, and I have this, it can be passed around, but I don't know how much money also has been spent. It's been a year plus February, March, April, May, June. It's been 12 plus 4 is what, that many months. That EMD has been working continuously to develop the concept number 14. I don't know if, it takes, I guess you have to examine, is that amount of money, is it okay to say, well, that was a $350,000 error to go down that road, let's come back and, spend more money to look at the other option? I don't know. And I'm not even saying 3A is the right option. But I don't think abandoning the harbor is abandoning the project and taking the money somewhere else is an option. But I do think that we can downscale this project. That's all that I'm thinking we can do. I don't have any answers.
Was the Uplands plan different at different
No.
stages?
Now, except 3A does move Lookout Park. 3A did provide for Lookout Park.
Oh, you mean the money is there to move the park?
It was part of the plan.
Okay.
I will say that when you look at
Okay.
when you look at 14, when you look at 14, the one we're looking at now, the park is still where it is and surrounded by the new parking lot. In 3A, the parking lot is the same size as in 14, but Lookout Park was put on an extension out this way. And I'm assuming when I look at the cost figures, that the cost of doing that was in here.
And you say 3A is $4 million cheaper than 14.
Concept 14 was at the time estimated to be $25,428,000, and concept 3A was estimated at $21,421 million.
And can that 4 million be put into
I can't answer that.
something else?
I can't answer that.
Gershon, go ahead. What's up?
Yeah, I have a question. Do all of these plans include the steel wave barrier option? They all have that in it?
I would like to say this, that in September of 2012, when the community of Haines, the Borough Assembly, adopted the comprehensive plan, we were in the throes of the decision to move from the north to the south. And it was very clear, it's on page 123 of the comprehensive plan, there was a discussion, and I know that anybody can write a comprehensive plan, and I think it was Scheinberg, right? And what she wrote was, well, you know, we're just moving from the north to the south. The costs of maintenance, operation, and upland development as a consequence of moving south still need to be developed. And that was one thing that we have never done. We just moved south and kept on going. We didn't stop and say, okay, if we move south, what will that mean?
Well, the reason I ask is that there are many communities around the country that frankly rue the day that they ruined the aesthetics of their waterfront, and they're spending millions of dollars to reclaim waterfront area. And so my curiosity is that every drawing I've seen, and maybe I just haven't seen this, and I'd like to know that there's a drawing out there. All the drawings we see of this, and one I saw in the paper and the one you just showed us, Deborah, in that packet, they're all an aerial view with a line where the wave barrier is. And I recently heard from someone that the wave barrier is actually going to stick way out of the water to the point where when you're in certain locations along that street, you're not even going to be able to see Lynn Canal. All you're going to see for 700 feet is the steel wave barrier. And I don't know if this is true, but my question is there a drawing somewhere? I mean, my gosh, you know, I work with engineers on other types of projects. We have an architect on staff. Didn't anybody ever do a drawing of what this would look like from street level so that we could see, other than as an aerial schematic, what we're buying? Is there such a visual interpretation out there? And if not, it would seem like going down there with a camera and taking some photos and putting it into Photoshop or SketchUp or something. One could add this in, so then at least we as a community could see what this is going to look like. I think that's an important thing for us to know, so that we're not, trying to, so we all don't have different images in our mind of what the thing's even going to look like when it's done.
Well,
So-
I know the other day that that was asked at the Assembly, at the Planning Commission meeting, and no one could answer that question. It's like, does somebody have an answer?
Yes.
Bill?
What do you call it? I'm wondering whether anybody has given any thought to how this fits in with the rest of our harbor. A couple meetings ago, it was Tresham that brought up that when a cruise ship comes in and docks at our PC dock, it looks right straight at that spot. So what image are we giving our tourists? Has anybody done anything that resembles an overall plan of our harbor? For a group of people to work over here, another group of people working over here is just fine, except for what fills this in. How does it work together? How can it be blended together? Those are questions that we need to work on. We need to see if we can work together to make this good for all of us, not just some of us.
I agree.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
Bob,
ahead.
but I just was hoping that someone could answer that. Is there anybody who can
No,
really
there's
answer
no
this?
street level.
Dave,
Dave,
yeah.
go ahead.
Basic arithmetic. our tidal differential is 26 feet from maximum high to maximum low tide.
Okay.
This wave barrier has to go quite a few feet below that, and also quite a few feet above that, because it's got to protect against an incoming swell at maximum high tide. There could be a maximum high tide plus a storm. So you figure it's got to have maybe another 6 feet above the maximum high tide line. So right away you've got 26 feet tidal differential, another 6 feet at least to be a wave barrier at the maximum high tide.
Right.
And so there you have it. It's got to be visible. The most extreme situation would be the 26 feet plus, say, another 6. So, 32 feet, maybe a little more, tall on a low tide. So that's what would be visible. You would see a 32-foot
And
700
steel wall. And that's only but that's what you wanted to know.
yeah,
and
that's what I look. But
those
thank
are the
you.
numbers.
Thank you. No, that's what I want to know. But what I'd really like to see
is what it looks
is
like.
what it's going to look like from the street or
Your
from the
Photoshop
harbor.
idea is a
Or,
good one, I think.
yeah.
But there is a PNB website where you have photographs of the steel breakwaters that they do, and
But not from this perspective.
not from this perspective.
Okay.
If you've ever been in a Skagway, then that's probably what's good. Sir, does you want to comment?
There was a question about whether or not in this initial A3 or
3A.
3A, whether or not any consideration had been given to the maintenance question. That seems to be an enormous question.
And then one thing too, the supporters say that 50 years we're not going to be here, so what's it matter, But somebody's going to be here in 50 years, and you're going to have this gigantic structure to deal with, out in the ocean, and that's for a small town seems like a pretty big commitment.
But what is the advantage? You championed the idea of harbor changes. What are
I
the
worked
things
on the
that
harbor
need to be
project.
done?
I worked on the harbor project with 3 managers, and I wrote various reports and master plans and all the rest of that stuff through the time. But during the critical point when the change was made, when it was determined that building to the north was just not a possibility, and we moved to the south, and for a long while we had a rubble mound to the south, and then that changed to the wave barrier. And one of the things that I didn't say this earlier, but we as a community, I think, failed to identify the authority for the overall plan of the harbor. So a lot of the questions that are being raised right now, the financing of it, the maintenance of it once it's built, the business plan for it, the Army Corps of Engineers did all of that work for us when we were on the north side. When we switched to the south side, we didn't do any of that work for us. We were on our own after that because the Army Corps of Engineers was with us on the north, but they didn't come with us on the south. So I think that had we been strong enough, I think, to put this in the hands of the Planning Commission, which has a much broader authority and a broader responsiveness to the community. Those kinds of questions, I think, would have been explored a little more fully. And I myself would like to see the project moved over into the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, because right now what we've got is a borough assembly, an advisory board, the advisory board to the borough assembly, and by code, we're supposed to plan our public facilities and our public projects through the Planning Commission. So we have not followed the path that would have, in my opinion, netted us a lot of the answers that we seek now. So the answer is no.
Is there a power to negotiate a potential delay in the endpoint of this present funding?
I would hope so. And I think that the assembly, and I really am glad there are assembly members here. Maybe they could start thinking about whether or not we could explore that. Once it's found out that's impossible, then we have something else to look at, but we can't, I don't advise that we just keep on behaving based on what we think we know is true. We should behave on what we research to know is true.
Mr. Turner?
Yes, I've been on this commission for quite a while and worked through a lot of this stuff.
Which commission? Excuse me.
The Harbor
That's like
Advisory
advisory.
Commission Board. And one thing that I'm going to contradict you on, Deborah, is that the planning commission is not supposed to plan our facilities. They don't go out, I don't believe, and say, okay, we want to do this, and then you need to do this, and you need to put lighting here. They are supposed, as far as I know, after the plan is designed, then they are to look at it and okay, and or have disagreements with it at that time. We haven't done that very well with them. I mean, it was brought to them, and as a citizen brought papers and stuff, and that didn't happen. But as far as the wave barrier itself goes, I was one of the last ones standing for the rebel mound. And when they proved to me that, beyond any doubt of mine, that we couldn't feasibly do that and do anything else, we could have put a 250-foot of rock in and no basin and no nothing else to protect what we have for the money. The people that I represent and talked to wanted more basin and wanted more of the stuff. So the option was to go with the wave barrier because that would give us more room. Now, the wave barrier is at 25-foot elevation, according to the plan. So that probably is close to what the rebel mound is now. Now, it's not going to be becoming. It is going to be a big steel wall out there. That's all there is to it. There's no other way around it. And unless somebody goes out there and paints dolphins and stuff on it, there is...
Go, Don.
Cheryl?
You know what, that's what it is. And so if we're going to get facilities that people want, this is the way that it's went through the process. And the thing that upsets me probably as much as anything is that this has been going on for years. When we built the harbor in the mid-70s, it was too little for the fleet we had then. We had folks left that wanted stalls at other places. And Joe is right to point that there's some holes in there now, but there's still a bunch of guys on the beach fishing. The gillnet season don't start till the 21st of this month. And when it comes time to fishing season, boy, it gets filled up. But, you know what, the public process, there's been lots of time for it. And we had meetings in the library. Every 2 or 3 people show up. It wasn't until after the fact, basically, the people come out of the woodwork and say, oh my God, what are you doing? You know, and that irritates me because there's been lots of time for people, if they've been paying attention at all, to look at this. Thank you.
Dave?
Well, I don't know if we're at a point of considering like alternatives, but there's all kinds of wave barriers. And the one this approach I would like to see in a situation like this is like a floating wave barrier, which it's totally doable. I just don't know the cost. But you just put
That was one of the
floating units and you anchor them in place. And the neat thing about floating is that it's at all times it's only 6 feet tall because like it goes all the way down at low tide and goes up there at high tide, breaks the waves and never looks different. It's just always this low structure, and you can also do moorage on the inside of that. So give a little more security to the harbor. So that was just one.
Don can probably speak to that because that was one of the options that was there, I think around 2009 or 2010.
PMD's claim to fame is that they invented these
2012.
steel with pile breakwaters. And
Oh.
they've done them in a lot of towns. And most of the places they've done them don't have the title, with the exception of Scott, don't have the title differential that we do. In other words, when they do them down in the state of Washington, the tide changes aren't so big, so that the difference isn't that much at high and low tide. But here we've got the up to 26 feet differential, so the thing is like 3 stories high, at times. And then when the tide comes up, then it's not quite that high. So, 32 feet is 3 stories tall. And just for perspective. And as far as I can tell, and I really appreciate what Joe had done for the background information, that there are kind of like diagrams of a whole bunch of ideas that I was not aware of.
Well, Don, do you remember why the floating wave barrier was scrapped? Because I know that I saw pictures of the floating wave barrier.
Right, and that was before I was on the Harbor Commission. And actually, Bill Thomas was trying to get money for, they was going to bring pieces of the Hood Canal Bridge up. No, seriously.
I think that engineer said the waves would come over a floating.
That's what I
but
remember
it wouldn't
hearing,
really
that it
stop
was
the
too
waves
big.
for here.
Right.
That's what they had schematics of the actual waves, and they said that wouldn't work. The committee looked at that.
Yeah.
They thought about that.
I think for the need, the specific needs in that location, though, I think a floating breakwater could work, because it's just not that hit that hard by weather. It's just not.
Well, I just got the feeling there was confusion in the town, and there was fear, and I wanted to have this meeting to share the information that I had and hear your concerns, and maybe we could figure something out. I don't know what the solution is. I know
Well, we first have to identify
the
what the
problem
problem
is
is.
there's too much maintenance funds for this steel wall barrier that's going up, and not enough money coming in.
We should write down what the problem is.
Yeah,
Well,
George.
there hasn't been much discussion about the uplands plan, and it seems like there's a lot of isolated things going on. I mean, we're looking at Picture Point on one end, and the cruise ship dock and beyond at the other end. We hear conversations like, our waterfront has, all kinds of potential for visitors and, all kinds of things we can do. But I haven't heard of a discussion where these things are interrelated, like the development to the north is related to the development to the south. The various proposals are very independent of each other. And it makes me have a sense that shouldn't we have like a total waterfront
That's what a planning
plan?
commission does. That's what a planning commission does.
And then, once we have that in place, some of the solutions would be obvious, because we know what our goals are. Right now, our goals are kind of micro goals, one little thing at a time, and it seems like, I think what Gershon said is a lot of communities spend a lot of time and money and agony retrofitting because they didn't do this initial unified step from one end to the other.
This is not it.
I just kind of want to address something along that same line, George. A few assembly meetings ago, the mayor had given the task of Lookout Park to Planning and Zoning, Parks and Rec, and the TAB board to deal with. And that took in the uplands, it took in that whole area. It was a golden opportunity for these committees to put a lot of thought, have public participation, have people be included in the process of making something there or not. Maybe we don't have to move Lookout Park. I mean, Lookout Park is not going to be looking at a parking lot. It's up above a parking lot. There's nothing that says that we want to have an industrialized area down there. We want greenbelt. We want it to look nice. But that takes money. And money was not brought into the equation of Lookout Park. So, I mean, that has to be brought out. Are there going to be fundraisers, or is the state solvent enough Can
If
we
I
go
said
to
look
the
at
state?
part, I meant picture point, integrating
Oh,
picture.
picture point, okay,
Picture
well, there,
point with the whole.
there's another thing there
the
too,
whole
because of the comp
distance of
plan
the work.
using that as a boardwalk along there, that's all private property. I mean, how many private citizens are going to allow this? You know, this is something that has to be brought out and taken into consideration as well. But as of yet, none of these committees are dealing with Lookout Park. There has not been one meeting. I have a TAB meeting. I'm a liaison to the TAB. I think our meeting's on Friday. And I basically told our chairperson last meeting, if you have to extend your hand, extend it, but let's get it going. You know, it's not saying that it's going to happen right away, because as we all well know, anybody who's been involved with building dock facilities, construction, who has an inkling of what's going on with the PC dock. We're in phase 2 of the PC docks. There's 3 phases or 4 phases of that. These harbors and docks are built in phases. The money is not there all at one time up front. We're sitting on it just waiting to spend it. It goes in phases, and that's another thing that you have to take into consideration. The floats were not considered when this plan was approved. We knew at the time that we approved the 95% plan, we didn't have floats. That's part of a phase that comes at a later time. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. And Joe, I know you're well aware of those things, but you know, it's to have all of this information out to the public. I've been coming to Ports and Harbor Committee meetings, and I'm getting the information. You know, I come to TAB meetings, well, I have to come to the TAB meetings, but I mean, the information in kind of a sidebar effect is there. You know, and we have very little, very little public participation in those committee meetings.
I think that if the project had been called the Harbor and Parking Lot Expansion Project, that it probably would have had a lot more participation. I just think people didn't know what was happening until that picture appeared in the newspaper, and it was this huge parking lot and this harbor, you know, this empty harbor. And so I think, I mean, I felt misled because simply of the name of the project. If it had included parking lot, upland expansion project, I think more people would have been more aware of the scope of the project.
You know, that's an interesting point, Gina, because when a hotel builds, like the Aspen, they have 52 rooms. They have 52 parking slots. When the harbor expands, it's going to have parking slots for every one of those already existing floats or non-existing floats. They've got to have the parking lot, the infrastructure to handle the commerce that'll come after it's built. You know, so the parking lot has to be big enough to accommodate the size of the harbor. And we're not looking at it for the here and now. We're looking at it for 20, 30 years down the road. Haines may be a bigger community by then. Who knows? But if we don't progress ourselves, progress our infrastructure, we can't grow as a community.
Yeah, Tresham, let Tresham speak.
Well, I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee, but I just got on there. But we did actually discuss this at the only meeting that we've had. And most of the commission members were basically on board with the harbor expansion as it was presented to them in some respects. And so they recommended that the Lookout Park be moved to the point at the bottom part of the big parking lot, if in fact the project was to go ahead as planned. If not, they recommended to leave Lookout Park where it was and do a landscaping around the waterfront with access to the boat harbor and some parking down at the lower level, like you say.
That's really good, Tresham, but you're tasked with 3 committees. All 3 committees need to meet. That was the gist of the mayor's proclamation on that.
I'm all for that. And I think
but we have to get them together.
Well,
you know,
right.
Somebody's got to extend the invite, or, you know, everybody's got to feel like they have to be invited, as I have found out here recently. But, I mean, you know, I'm going to talk to the mayor tomorrow, because this has got to get going.
Yeah.
Because it is not the people that participate on the committees that get the phone calls, the irate phone calls. It's me, it's Mike, it's our manager, our mayor, and they want to know why nothing's being done. Well, we've given it a task to 3 committees to do something, and still nothing is being done. So I don't know, it's going to have to take somebody to step in and say, you all 3 committees will be meeting on X day or the next day, and go on with it.
Yeah. Well, when I first realized the project, the parking lot, as proposed by Bill Mandeville for the financial and the purpose of this big 3-acre parking lot was, in fact, boat storage, and there was a number of slips that were going to be rented out yearly, and that's really a whole lot different, and the Lookout Park is going to be moved. So that's a whole lot different than just having some parking for the harbor. And you know, the cost of moving Lookout Park was never addressed. I mean, that's a lot of money, and I don't think that's part of the 19 million.
It's not.
So you know, we're looking at a lot of money here for the community, which a very small and relatively impoverished community here. I don't know how we're going to pull it off.
Well, see, and that's why I say these things come in phases. As with any boat harbor up and down southeast, they've all been built in phases. And they don't have the money right to begin with up front. They're not sitting on millions and millions of dollars to be just sitting on. It comes in phases.
Annie, what do you want to say?
I just, and I understand what you're saying, Diana, but it seems like with the current state of the state budget, that the prospect of funding future phases is very much up for grabs or in doubt. And so I'm not sure that saying, oh, well, that will happen when we get money for phase 3 or 4 isn't necessarily an assurance that that money's going to be forthcoming. And so it seems like it's not a bad idea to look at the existing pot and say, you know, what's the optimal way of doing something. And the one other thing I wanted to say is I appreciate what Don said about where was everybody when we were in the committee was meeting and we were having these conversations and so forth. The reality is that most of the people in the community don't have, because of working or what have you know, may not be able to invest that amount of time to go to committee meetings, whether they should or not. I'm not going to pass judgment on that, but we do tend to rely then on the media or the point at time at which it's really submitted for general public review and approval to then weigh in. I mean, that's kind of how things work, and so, you know, I can understand Don's frustration, but I can also say to expect all the people to have sat in on all those, you know, the minutiae of those meetings is I don't think that's realistic.
You got a question?
Well, it's a little bit aside right now, but one thing I've heard a lot from just talking to people about this is, well, people say, well, we have plenty of parking, and we have this other parking lot down by the cruise ship dock that sits empty most of the time, and why can't we use that? You know, why can't we get creative with using that for long-term boat storage in the winter and you know, maybe even extra parking in the summer. And I've been to a lot of different boat harbors in different areas and marinas around the country. And, you know, a lot of times where your boats are stored is several miles or more away from actually where you're going to put them in the water. Or, you know, that would be pretty far. But, you know, they're not always just like right there where you just get to, like, you know, pull out of the parking lot and there's your ramp, you know. So I'm just wondering if anybody I mean, that's just, the parking lot is just one piece of this whole picture, but I'm wondering if anybody knows about the reality of doing something like that to reduce the amount of parking lot expansion, that piece of it. Anybody have an idea of what that would actually take or look like to use that?
To use what?
That parking lot, the cruise ship parking lot, or, yeah.
I think part of the issue though is that you've got sports boats. And the people that go out for subsistence fishing or sport fishing or whatever, they come down to the harbor area with their trailer. And they launch their boat, and then they've got their pickup truck with the trailer. That's really what takes up so much space, and it's why you have to have that much space. You can't realistically ask people to go park their car with their sport boat trailer
And then walk
2
back.
miles away and then come back. So
It's actually not that far. I mean, in our case, it really isn't that far. People do end up walking.
Heidi,
some
if you could get that accomplished in this town, I'm more.
I just don't know what the reality of using that parking lot, at least for some of the types of parking. There's many different types of parking that occur, right? Long-term, short-term.
It's not very user-friendly for the boat people.
The parking lot, I don't know how many of you pay attention to it in the summertime, but there's no place to park down there a lot of the time. And when we start.
The boat harbor parking lot.
Right, the boat harbor parking lot. And a lot of times, the harbor bar parking winds up over into our parking and taking spaces up. Now, I'm not a young kid anymore, so when I put my boat in the harbor, I gotta crawl up over top of the trailer, up on the bow of my boat, and get into it to unload. And if I don't have somebody with me, I gotta go over the dock, leave my pickup sit there, tie it up, come back around, and go move it. And we had money for a sport ramp that was designated from sport fish licenses and stuff 12, 14 years ago. It's been a while. And they would not let us put it in because we didn't have a spot that was calm enough, there was too much wave action out there to put that in. That money apparently is still available, so that when we get this harbor done, that will be a phase that will happen right away. And they'll have a float so that you can drive down there and slide the boat off on a float and tie it up and not have to climb up over top of everything and to do that. And then people will park their boats and trailers, and my pickup and trailer takes up 60 foot of room. And so there's a lot, it's a pretty big area. And as far as I know, we wasn't intending to, Manville's assertion we was gonna rent that out year round was not something that was even discussed with us to do.
Boat storage.
The long-term.
What we discussed was for winter storage, and people be back in the water in the summer and gone. So,
So I guess part of, what I hear people wondering is, there's lots of different types of parking, short-term, long-term, transient, and what percentage of it is long-term boat storage that we're building an expansion of parking lot for, and maybe, is that one piece that could reduce the footprint of the parking lot, anyway.
Bill, want to say something?
As far as this boat storage up on the parking lot, the borough's got no business getting into competition with private enterprise. Currently, there are quite a few places around the downtown area or around the general harbor area where people can store boats. And I talked with Roger Stomble myself about what his plan is for the upgrade area by Canal Marine. And he fully intends to have boat storage there. So that would be, some more private enterprise. And actually, it was Donnie Turner pointed something out to me with the current plan that we have for this parking lot. If you look at the radius from that ramp, as Don just pointed out, he's some 60 foot long with his truck and his trailer. You look at the radius that you would have to use coming off that ramp, and you haven't got a place to park boats. It's just that simple, unless you put a rowboat over in the corner someplace.
So a big part of that space is literally then just having the space to move these big trailers around. Is that Yeah, not that
That's a lot.
that it's gonna be full of boats all the time, but that it just literally, yeah, I mean, big trailer takes.
Heidi, I'm going to quote our manager, and Mr. Sosa, if I misquote you, please step in and correct me. But before that boat storage ever came to being, he told us at the assembly that the borough is not in business to go up against private enterprise. We do not want to do that. We have no intention of doing that. But what this boat storage did is it filled a need, because every one of those boats, or the majority of those boats that are down there, would be in Skagway. We're not boats that would normally have stayed here and gone to other boat storage areas. They would have gone to Skagway. So we managed, by just doing that simple little thing with Sean and Mr. Sosa and the Ports and Harbor, we managed to keep those boats here over the winter. Those guys were extremely happy because now they can go down and check their boats. They're accessible. They can work on them anytime they want. And they're here at home. And we get some of the sales tax. But no, when Roger puts in his facility, that boat storage goes away.
So
We
that'll
have
open
no
up
intention
more,
of doing,
so that'll open up a lot more room.
it'll be for parking. And I hope the mindset is not there that is what it's going to be, a boat storage area, because that's not what we want it to be. I mean, that's not what it's intended for. It's intended for parking, not for boat storage.
I just want to address something you said, Mrs. Lapham, with all due respect. I think what you were saying is one of the big problems with this project, that the $10 million is just another phase that's going to come later. That I personally don't think that there's any guarantee that $10 million is going to come. You know, the big reason we got the $19 million was because Bill Thomas was chairman of the Finance Committee of the House of Representatives, and he's not that anymore. So, and I personally think that the legislators are going to say, well, Haines got their bite of the apple. They got their $19 million once before, and all the other towns are going to line up before us and say, you know, why do you guys even need, or, you know, you got your $19 million before, and that's a pretty big stretch to say we're just going to get another $10 million later.
You know, Joe, and that's too bad, because it's statements like that that start formulating mindsets that are very difficult for the assembly or the manager or Ports and Harbor Committee, any committee, to convince our citizens otherwise. When you say, oh, the legislators will think, that's your opinion. That's not based on fact. We have a project now that is based on fact. We need to deal with facts only, not assumptions, not hearsay or rumor. I've heard big, tall chain link fences around it. I've heard a multitude of things that people are going down several rabbit trails, and it's like, wait a minute, you know, this project has been going on for 15, 20 years, and now you're coming out and you're telling me what's going, no, that's not in the plan. That never was in the plan. Well, it could be, yes, and I could step outside and get run over by a semi-truck. But, I mean, we've got to deal with the reality and truth, not rumor or bias. And I know there are some people out there that do not want the harbor at all. It's a working harbor. Our fishing fleet is one of the top entities that bring sales tax into this community. And I mean, we have got to do some nice things to help grow that fleet, to keep the fleet here. We've also got a few boats that have left and gone other places. So I mean, we have to work.
Heather, you wanted to say something?
Yes, and I appreciate Diana's comments, and I was interested to listen to Deborah's about the 3A option way back at the beginning. And my question is that, and maybe the people on the Ports and Harbor, Diana or Don can help me here, is the Harbor Committee, is the harbor expansion being driven by comfish or sport fish more? Because it sounds like sport fish, because we're getting the wave barrier and we're getting the ramp and the float for the sport fishermen. but it doesn't sound like we're getting the drive-on, drive-off ramp for the commercial fishermen in this phase one, anyway. Is that a correct assumption, or is that not correct?
I don't think we're getting the launch ramp per se. That's not part of this project. It might come later, right, Donna? We're getting the weight bearing, the dredging, and the parking lot this round.
And the parking lot is the disposal or the placement
Right.
of the dredge
The dredge is
material.
gonna be
of
the
that.
parking lot.
But it's not necessarily the finish of the parking lot, that's a finish. But I thought, Diana, I guess this whole issue that was just brought to light between you and Joe. You know, Joe is saying, I don't believe there's going to be any money. And, you know, you're saying, we're implying that you have faith that there is. So I guess I'm more of Joe's. I mean, I sit there and I think, oh my God, the state of Alaska almost shut down. They're shutting down the ferries. You know, where is the money coming from? Even on the federal level, you know, we're spending an awful lot of money outside of the domestic needs, and I guess I just think that there's not that it's all drying up. So I don't know.
You know, Deborah, I don't believe that the big pot, as we all know and love Alaska to be, full of money and oil money that has gotten us so many different facilities and entities, is there. I'm trying to look at it as a realist and know that these things go in phases. This time next year, who knows where the barrel of oil is going to be? I don't know. I don't even know when our legislators come back into session. Are they going to be basing the budget on that, or are they going to go to LNG? You know, there's so many different, they've got so many huge options.